Okay, I think we will get started and others can join as we're along. Well, thank you guys for joining the Q3 DPAL meeting. For those of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Kyla. I am the Deputy Director over here at MDHI. The purpose of today's meeting is just to walk through some updates that we have for you all, and then we will have time at the end for any questions that you guys may have for us, or if there's stuff that you need us to walk through. This is really kind of just a time for you all to be able to connect with us one-on-one, ask for support, or even ask for support of others. So just general housekeeping, we ask that you stay muted. Please type your questions in the chat box. We will monitor and try to answer as we go along, and then we will also have time at the end to answer any questions that we weren't able to answer along, and then at that time we can also open up the floor if you guys want to come off mute and ask some additional questions. So next slide, please, Jalisha. So just kind of agenda today is walk through a welcome. We will be walking through at a high level the data standard changes that will be coming out later this year in October. So we will be discussing those changes and the impacts that has for data collection. We will also be reviewing training and then pointing out some data quality errors and reminders, and then wrap up and then hold space for any Q&A at the end. So first, I want to do a kind of a staffing update. As for those of you that have been around for a little while and have been to a couple of these meetings, we do have some new faces today. So I want to welcome our new staff. So we have Olive. You'll also see her email come across as Olivia. So it's either Olivia or Olive, and she is our new data quality specialist. So she is really, we'll be working with you all to make sure that your data is clean and accurate. Many of you have probably already received emails from her. And then we have Jalisha, who is our new training specialist. So Jalisha will be focusing on our training and helping ensure that our end users understand HMIS and how to enter it and why it's important to have that data entered. And then we have Jeevan, and Jeevan is our new data analyst. So Jeevan will work alongside our data team to help make pretty dashboards and enter any data quality or data reports, data special requests that may come in. So yeah, that is just a quick staffing update, and then I will pass it along to Matt to handle data standards. But I do want to preface with another update that this will be Matt's last data our DPAL meeting with us, as he will be transitioning out of his role at MDHI on August 25th. So I will pass it over to him to give us one last hurrah on the data standards.
Well, thanks, Kyla. It might be one last hurrah for the Metro Denver DPALs, but I'm not going far. I'm actually going over to the Division of Housing to be the new Balance of State HMIS program manager. So I'll still get to work very much in this space, particularly with any of you providers who have programs that operate in the Balance of State continuum. And hopefully get to create resources and some more dashboards and data products as well. So I'll get into the FY 2024 HMIS data standard updates. There are quite a few for this year. As a reminder, HUD and the other federal reporting partners release these data standards every 2 years, with fiscal year 2024, which becomes effective on October 1st of 2023. So these are the most substantial data standard updates that we have seen since MDHI has been the HMIS lead agency back in 2018. We're updating all of our client intake paperwork, and all of the associated data collection screens in the system itself are also going to be updated in alignment with the upcoming data standards, and resources about all of this work will happen and be posted to the help desk as soon as we're able to. So let's get into it. We're going to go through some project type updates, then some kind of client updates, and then some enrollment updates. So the first overall updates we want to go over, we're kind of buttoning up some available project types for HMIS. Previously, emergency shelter projects, there was just one overall emergency shelter project that had an additional data element that was known as tracking method. And for those of you that have emergency shelter projects, you're familiar with what I'm talking about. One of them was entry exit. So people who are enrolled are assumed to get bed nights every night from the time they enter or get a project start date to the time they exit or get a project exit date. The other is night by night shelter tracking. And that's where they get an initial enrollment, but they might only be accessing or staying at your shelter intermittently. And they get bed night services on the dates that they stay. So moving forward, there will still be 2 options for emergency shelters, but there's not going to be an additional tracking method anymore. They're going to button that up at the project type level. So there's just going to be a new project type called emergency shelter night by night and a project type called emergency shelter entry exit. Functionally, the workflows are the exact same. It's just something we'll need to kind of button up at project setup time. Then we can go on to the next slide. The other project type update concerns rapid rehousing projects. And that is because there were some disconnects with rapid rehousing project types that may only be providing services, but not actually providing rental assistance. So HUD has, there's still one overall rapid rehousing project type, but there's a subtype field that's been added to clarify whether the project is services only, meaning they provide services only and do not provide ongoing rental assistance or support inventory for any of the people that are being served. And then there's rapid rehousing, housing with or without services. So we assume that most of the rapid rehousing projects in the continuum fall into that bucket, offering ongoing rental assistance that may or may not be accompanied by financial or other supportive services. But our team will work to verify the appropriate subtype with each rapid rehousing project that's in place, and we'll update those things on the back end to make sure your projects are tagged appropriately. And then another kind of project setup update from HUD is the HMIS participation status. So previously, this was just a yes or no. You may not have even really known about this data element because it's more on the system administrator side of things. But this yes, no toggle has essentially been updated to a pick list, and it's updated for not participating as one of the values. And that's really just for housing inventory count or HIC placeholder projects. So projects that exist that just may not participate with HMIS data collection. HMIS participating is the one that applies to most of the projects that we've configured, right? Most of your projects that are in the system participate with HMIS data collection. And then the last option is kind of another placeholder value for those projects that are actually participating in a comparable database. So for if you're a victim service provider or work with victims of domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence exclusively, there are comparable database requirements that you're probably having to adhere to. And this allows us to know which projects are which based on these values. We'll also need to update participation dates for HMIS. But per the communications from HUD, those can be pretty high level estimates. It's not like the exact date these projects began participating or stopped participating, but we may need to verify some details with you about those details as well. And then the kind of I believe this is the last project setup update is about coordinated entry participation. And this helps us and HUD understand which projects in the continuum are engaged or participating with the local coordinated entry system or One Home for Metro Denver. So this captures information about whether a project is an access point, which is primarily given the configuration we have in the system, just One Home. One Home is really the only access point project that we have. The main data elements, which we'll get to on the next slide, are about whether the project accepts coordinated entry referrals. And if they do, what date did they start participating with coordinated entry and what date did they stop participating? So if we can go on to the next slide, I can explain those just a little bit more. Again, number one will be more for One Home than for any of our provider projects. But 2, 3, and 4 on the screen will be details that we need to complete for each and every project in the system. 3 and 4 primarily just for our housing provider projects that receive housing referrals from One Home. So we'll be tagging yes or no, this project receives referrals from coordinated entry in Metro Denver. And if they do, what date did they start? Again, using a high level estimate. And if they stop participating, what date did they stop participating? So another area we'll be reaching out to discuss. Yeah, all set. And then we'll go on to the kind of client and enrollment data standard updates, which kind of make up the bulk of the data standard updates from HUD. The first one is that HUD is opening up what can be considered a full legal name in the system. It is permissible for persons to use preferred names instead of legal names and have it be considered a full name reported. The only exception to that is for projects that require a legal name based on the eligibility of that funding source. The example is for VA funded projects, a legal name is still kind of the expectation there. Similarly, social security number, the guidance from HUD has made that a bit more flexible for certain funded projects, particularly COC and ESG and PATH are only required to get the last 4 digits of the social at this point. However, other funders still do require the full social, and our guidance as co-HMIS leads is to still try to please collect the full social whenever possible if participants are willing. It's really the best way to prevent duplication of clients in the system, bifurcating data collection on the same person and different profiles, skewing the ability to see the holistic picture about that person and their care coordination efforts. It's also a required element for accessing mainstream benefits, right? I don't need to tell any of you that being eligible for things like SNAP and other things of that nature, having that social on hand can help facilitate acquiring those resources for participants. If we can move on to the next slide. The other main update about clients is about gender. Gender is getting an update. It's really more of reframing of the available values in the pick list for gender, which is a multi-select field. It was and is a multi-select field. So as many gender identities as a person self-reports, that is what you are to collect. You can see the labels. They've updated female to woman or girl of child, man, boy of child. They've also updated the gender that is not singularly female or male, and have the options there on the right for you. So all these values will be mapped according to HUD specs. There shouldn't be any updates that are needed manually unless you are working with a person and they review the specifics and they'd like you to update their details, which is kind of business as per usual for updating data in HMIS. If we can move on to the next one. The other one is race and ethnicity, and this is actually a pretty big update. Historically, it's been race and ethnicity are captured in 2 separate fields. Primarily, ethnicity was used to gauge non-Hispanic or Hispanic. And moving forward, HUD has recognized like kind of the disconnect in the way that this information was being gathered. And they've combined race and ethnicity into one new field. So it's a multi-select field. People can self-identify or self-report as many races and ethnicities as they identify with. And again, there will be no updates that are needed manually from providers unless they catch a mistake for a person and need to update the value. There will also be an additional text box field called additional race and ethnicity detail for people who review the pick list and say, you know what, none of these options correspond for how I identify. This doesn't reflect who I am. And providers will have the ability to enter in a free text field the response that the person would like to have documented. And then another update is for veterans in the branch of the military pick list, which is generally only required for VA funded projects. There's a new value for the Space Force branch of the military, which now is a thing. So that is available to be used as well. And then very finally, this is one that's less a data standard update and more just a data collection update from the co-HMIS leads. Previously, we had guidance around how to navigate people who refuse to provide a date of birth. Because of the conditional logic that's in place in the system, where the veteran status question will only display if a person can be calculated to be 18 years or older. Right? So the system is trying to be smart. It's trying to limit the fields that display in the interface. But what we were noticing was happening was that people who refused to provide a date of birth, they couldn't have their veteran status documented. And if they're a veteran being served by a VA funded project, for example, that was leading to some pain points. And our guidance previously was to enter kind of a dummy date of birth of 01/01/1911. And after kind of coming together as leads, we realized that this guidance to create this dummy date of birth was probably unnecessary, and we could just add some additional functionality in the system where if a person refuses their date of birth, we have a new option called client is a minor that displays right above veteran status that you can toggle on if they're a minor, and it'll remove the veteran status question. If the person has a valid date of birth, the client, and they're above 18, that client is a minor field, does not display, and veteran status works as expected. So let us know if you have questions about this. We were just trying to move away from having to collect dummy data to get necessary fields to display, if that makes sense. And then additionally, this one is also not a HUD data standard requirement, but it's one that the HMIS leads from around the state felt was a value add for people who would like to share their pronouns on their profile. So there are core fields in the system that we've added to client profiles where people can self-report their pronouns. And if they pick manual entry, if they review the list and say none of these options correspond to my pronouns, a new field displays called pronouns manual entry, and it's free text, and you can enter whatever it is that they specify. So this is optional. People are not required to provide this information. If they would like to, it will be available on their client profile. And then let's get into enrollments. So the first part of enrollment updates are about just kind of some language updates, truthfully. The prior living situation questions have been, they are confusing in the way that HUD has spelled them out and the intent of what they're asking. So HUD has tried to help underscore that the overall approximate date homelessness started is the current episode of homelessness for the person. So the old value was just approximate date homelessness started. The new value includes this episode in the description. And there's also some prior living situation, and this will also be true for current living situation and exit destinations, as we'll see in a moment. If you picked rental by client, there's an option with ongoing subsidy, right? And previously there were other independent values that corresponded. It could have been rental by client with a VASH housing subsidy, and that was its own independent value for prior living situation. So moving forward, there's going to be one overall rental by client with ongoing subsidy field. And if you pick it, a new subfield will display in the interface where you then specify which type of subsidy is it. So it's less like removing data elements and more kind of pivoting to have them be collected in a subfield if you pick this rental by client with ongoing subsidy. And if we move on to the next slide, we're going to see that that's true for current living situations. It's the exact same update. It's just if you pick rental by client with ongoing subsidy as the current living situation, that subtype field will display, and you pick the appropriate subsidy type at that point. And similarly, in the next slide, we will see that the destination at exit is also getting that makeover too for that value. So this is probably going to be the one that is most impacted by this data standard update. I think more people are probably leaving projects, hopefully, to rental by clients with subsidies than are coming into projects with subsidies. So when you pick this destination, you'll just have that subtype field that displays where you specify the subsidy type that they're receiving. And the last exit update is really just a value update. The destination at exit for emergency shelter got a little bit of a makeover, removing RI funded from before host home. So that's it, just a very minor language update. And another kind of minor language update, there was a health insurance value for Veterans Administration medical services that's now being rebranded as Veterans Health Administration. So that's all that one is, just a language update, which our paperwork will reflect. And then this one really only impacts projects where there's one project that's operating in multiple continuums of care. I don't think that we have very many of these projects anymore. I know that SSVF used to operate this way, where they had one overall project that was statewide. And at the time they enrolled everybody, they had to specify the continuum of care the people were in and being served in. So previously that had to be collected at project start and at status updates and annual assessments. Moving forward, the guidance from HUD is just to collect this field at project start only. So just kind of removing some moving pieces for that. And then additionally, there was an update to sexual orientation, the field that was previously only required for heads of households enrolled in runaway homeless youth or RI projects and the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program funded projects. It's now also a required data element at project start for heads of household for HUD COC permanent supportive housing projects. But the HMIS leads have decided to make this field available as an optional data collection element for any head of household who would like to share this information. again, more to represent disparities and for care coordination than for anything else. So an optional data collection element that will be available at Project Start for heads of households in all projects in the system. And translation assistance, this is another one that's really, it's specifically required for certain federally funded projects, which are listed on the screen here. But it has also been added as an optional data element for all projects in the system. Again, to help understand how many clients need access to translation services. And the leads from around the state sent out a survey earlier in the year to try to populate the pick list that we're going to implement that reflects the languages that providers indicated would be most beneficial or needed in a field like this. So essentially, you will pick whether translation assistance is needed. If the answer is yes to that, the new pick list will display. Up the 20 languages that providers specified will be in that pick list, but there is an option for different preferred language if the person reviews the options and does not indicate any of those are their preferred language. And then that subsequent free text field will appear where the user will get to enter in what the person has said their preferred language is. And then we're going to go through some minor updates now. These are more just language updates for certain funders. So Runaway Homeless Youth Projects, there was a slight label update for a few values here. One of them is for RY 14 service connections. So the previous value was postnatal care for mother, and the updated value is postnatal care for client or person who gave birth. Similarly for R17 project completion status, it was youth voluntarily left early, and they've updated that to be client voluntarily left early. Same for expelled or otherwise involuntarily discharged. It is now just client instead of youth. SSVF, some minor label updates for our VA funded projects as well here. It was extended shallow subsidy for V2 type of service provided, and now it's just called shallow subsidy. They've also rebranded the existing date field to be relabeled as start date of financial assistance. And they've added a new date field entitled end date of financial assistance to try to capture those ranges a little bit more granularly. They've also updated a label for the financial assistance. And I think, it's extended shallow subsidy rental assistance, updating to shallow subsidy financial assistance. And then additional financial assistant type response options were added of landlord incentive and tenant incentive. So these only impact our SSVF partners, but we did want to be sure to document that here. We can go on to the next slide for SSVF as well. Another response label update for the percent of AMI associated with the household. Previously, it was less than 30, 30 to 50, and greater than 50. And moving forward, it'll be 30% or less, 31% to 50%, 51% to 80%, and 81% or greater. So adding some additional granularity. They've also retired the last permanent address data element, which I believe was captured on the entry screen for SSVF projects. So that one is no longer required and will be going away. And they've also made some minor label updates to the homelessness prevention targeting criteria as well here. So those are documented here, more label updates than anything else, no new options. I just wanted to document those as well. And then finally, I think I'm about done saying words at you. There was some miscellaneous language updates that we want to be sure to cover with everybody. Client refused has been updated to client prefers not to answer. Everywhere in the system, there was a value for client refuse, which is most fields. It will now be updated to client prefers not to answer. And domestic violence victim has been updated to survivor of domestic violence. And finally, the data element C1 well-being, which was previously required for HUD COC funded projects, is no longer required to be collected and will be removed. So I believe if we go to the next slide, that is all of the data standard updates. If you have any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat and I'm happy to tackle those now or look for tickets to come in later. But thank you for listening to all of the many data standard updates that are coming and effective October 1st. Last thing, sorry, Jalisha. The data standards will also update, or they will impact our published dashboards and data sources. So there will probably be a period of a few weeks to a month where we need to take our data sources offline to account for all of the updated and core data elements that have gotten updated values to make sure that we're reflecting those appropriately in the things that we have published. So I am now done and we'll go on mute.
Thank you, Matt. So now we're moving into the training portion of this presentation. As a reminder, it is the duty of the DPAL to sign up staff for training. And you can do this by signing into the Zendesk and going into the MDHI DPAL zone. There you will find a Google link where you can fill out for each staff member and tell us the type of training that they will need. Some of the emails might not come through. So if they don't, you can either just send me a message, or this message will pop up on the Google form, and it'll tell you to just tell your staff member to use their email to sign in, and just forget password and reset the password that way so that they can have their login credentials. All right, so the current breakdown of the training is broken down into 4 parts. The first part is HMIS 101, which just goes over background information about HMIS, the information we collect, some HUD background, key terminologies, things of that nature. And then you go into day 1, day 2, and day 3, which basically walks you through different portions of HMIS, such as enrolling a client, doing prior living situations, exiting a client from a program. That's all included in these HMIS days of training. Coordinated entry training, also one home training, is a separate training from HMIS training. And so that should be requested separately. You can send an email to the help desk and request that for your staff, and I'll go ahead and enroll them in that coordinated entry training. Right. So on the Zendesk Help Desk Center, this is the page of it. Right here, you can see we have the MDHI DPAL zone. This is where you would click to access the training link. It'll say training sign up Denver. You also want to make sure you're choosing the correct one, Denver. And I would suggest that you also bookmark this link for future staff registrations that you need to sign up your staff for training. A few training tips. Training is designed to resemble real life situations that requires the learner's undivided attention. I know sometimes we feel eager to just kind of click through, but it's very imperative that you take your time as you go through the training. We also want to encourage staff to take notes throughout the training. There are several important key terms and tips within the training that are necessary for being successful. So we want to make sure that everyone is just receiving the appropriate information that they need to be successful with this. And also allow staff time to complete assignments, check their work, and make corrections. Once I receive the notification that one of the staff members have completed training, I'll go through and grade, and then I will send back feedback. So if they need to correct certain portions of their enrollment, I'll give them times to correct that so that they could complete the training. So with training 101, training office hours are no longer held weekly. You can request 101 training just by sending an email to the help desk, but we want to make sure that your staff are making an effort to correct their mistakes. Like I previously stated, I do provide those errors that they made and give them time to correct them. But if we see that we're still struggling with something, then you can request a 101 training with me and we'll set that up. All right, so we will be doing an HMIS training revamp. So the training that you have went through, or the training that's currently up, it will be changing. The goals is that we want to make it interactive and engaging. We want to provide various assessment structures that cater to different learning styles, provide additional real world application questions, and also just make the overall training as user-friendly as possible. I know that I did receive some feedback from Dee. We had a quick meeting and she provided me suggestions for the future training. If you have any comments, suggestions, or concerns, you can also send me an email at the hmishelp@mdhi.org, and I will take that into consideration as we are creating the new revamp for training. And I believe this is Last for me, important dates. If you need to take a screenshot or take a picture of it, please do so. August 21st will be the last day to register new staff for training. August 25th will be the last day to complete training in Talent LMS. September 1st, Talent LMS will be down for the entire month of September. And then October 1st will be the first day to register staff for training. The purpose of this is so that we could just apply those new data standard changes into the training. So we want to make sure everyone gets their training done before that, because once training is done, once we shut that down on August 25th, the information will no longer be there. So if you have a staff member that's in the middle of training, they will have to start over once we open it up for training again.
And just if I can jump in real quick, Jaleisha, just to clarify. So new user training will be down the month of September, and that is because we will be doing refresher training. And so for those of you that have been around a while, every year you are required to go through refresher training in order to keep your HMIS credentialing. So talent will be down for new user training, but anybody that has a current HMIS license that's currently in the system will have to complete refresher training in the month of September. And we will be sending out communication around that here in a couple weeks. So just to kind of clarify, it won't be down for everybody. It'll just be down for new user trainings.
Can I ask a really quick question there?
Yes.
What if I need to do my new user training and I may have reports that are due before October 1st?
We would recommend that if you have any staff that need to do that for that instance, that you get them in the system now before August 21st. So if you need to do your training, then to get in there. Unfortunately, we have to take it down for the month of September in order to update for data standard changes and to do refresher training. So if you have any staff that you may need to get trained, I would, we recommend that you get them in as soon as possible. The last day to register new staff is the 21st.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kyla.
You're welcome.
Hey everybody, my name is John LeBlanc and I'm a data analyst with MDHI. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our automated data quality monitoring, which the last time we all got together and spoke was just something that we were hoping to do. It's since been going out for maybe the past 6 months. And essentially what this means is that we're running reports on the back end of HMIS that will detect errors in the system automatically. And then basically take those reports and parse them out by user and send users reports about things that are in the system that need to be fixed for one reason or the other. And this is really nice for us personally because it saves us a lot of time, because these are errors that do need to get cleaned up in the system. And previously we were manually reaching out. So it gives us a lot of extra time to work on other data projects and a lot of other things. But it also helps us resolve data quality errors more quickly. And it also just reinforces best practices. Some errors are just, entering the wrong date, but some of them, when they happen over and over again, it's good to, get a report that's explaining the issue and how to solve it, so that those issues don't occur again in the future. So the one big point is that because these are automated emails, we're hoping that staff will resolve these issues right when they get that automated email. And if they have questions, there are several links within the email to submit a ticket to ask for help. So they should be submitting a ticket if they have questions instead of replying to the no reply email. And then once staff receive 2 of those automated emails explaining an issue, and if we're still seeing it in the system, then they'll get a manual follow-up. So if we go into the next slide, the errors that are being monitored this way are, there are quite a few things that involve future dated dates, those being program entries and program exits, as well as services and household move-in dates. So none of those things, and really any information, shouldn't be entered into HMIS before it's actually occurred. So for example, if someone is planning on moving into housing, 2 months from now, we'd ask that that not be entered until the client actually moves in. We're also monitoring automatically single child enrollments and exits to other. There are a few very rare exceptions to these two, but for the most part, the issue and how to solve it is explained within the email. And then coming soon, I'm sure some of you are all aware, we have to clean up overlapping enrollments every year and try to prevent them from happening. One, because it just it provides incorrect data for any reports we're doing, specifically about like bed nights. But it also is important for some federal reports that are submitted every year. And so currently our process is that we'll send one bulk report to DPALs with all of the overlapping enrollments that we found pertaining to the agency, and ask for those to be completed. And starting next week, we're hoping to just catch these overlapping enrollments as they occur on a weekly basis and send out emails to the users creating the overlapping enrollments, to try to catch these things as they happen instead of having one, really large cleanup on a yearly basis. And this is just an example of one of the automated emails that I'm referencing. And all of them will have a little table on the bottom that has information pertaining to the error. And so this email, for example, is a future dated exit. And you can see that the project exit date is like October of 2023 and September of 2023. A client can't have been exited in October of 2023 when we haven't gotten there yet. So it will always have a brief description of the error as well as possible solutions, depending on the scenario. And like I said, there are links at the top and at the bottom that have links to either Zendesk or an email address to submit a ticket. And again, because this is going out from a no reply email, the inbox isn't monitored. So if people do have questions, they're going to have to submit a ticket via those links. So yeah, that's about it.
John, we did have one question come in through the chat about whether the automatic data quality emails will CC DPALs or not. And I know that we discussed kind of both options, and I was wondering if you'd want to speak to that at all real quick.
Yeah, they currently don't CC DPALs. And I think that there are enough, things in place between, getting a reminder after getting the first data quality email and then having like a manual component to like, if people have received 2 automated emails, Olive is going to reach out, personally reach out and say like, follow up about the error and how to fix it. So currently we don't have them CCing DPALs. If that's something that some people wanted, we could look into it, but I think that would involve DPALs getting a lot more emails. And for the most part, once people get an automated email, they've been able to fix it as far as. So.
Thank you. If any DPAL does feel strongly, maybe just shoot us a ticket about it. We can see what options we can explore.
Totally.
Hi, I'm Olive. I am the new quality assurance specialist. You may have seen my name on the help desk, so it's nice to meet you all. I just have a few reminders here. So if you've been getting a lot of emails from me, it is because we are preparing for federal reports that are due this fall. The most recent cleanup project that I had sent out was about overlapping enrollments. Not everybody had these. It wasn't every single agency, so you might not have got them. But if you did, please help us in getting those entries updated for our LSA federal reports. And just a little guidance on these. If the staff who made the errors are no longer employed and you can't double check with them about these dates, please double check with your paper files or if you use the secondary software records. Also, there is a lot of instances of overlap from the COVID hotels because this report does pull from the last 2 years. If you have these overlaps from the COVID hotels and you're a night-by-night shelter, please make sure to not record a bed night for when they were at that COVID hotel. And if you were an entry-exit shelter, you can exit the client for while they were there and then create a new enrollment for them when they got back. And then moving on, we have a reminder that if a client gives a no to the ROI, so if they refuse consent for information sharing, please make sure that your staff changes their profile from public to private. It's going to be on that same screen where you update the ROI. It's just you have to change it manually. When you put no for an ROI, it's not an automatic update. So they do just have to change that from a public profile to a private profile if the client did refuse and say no to information sharing. And then lastly, this is about one home, staff that have one home access. If you can please remind the staff or somehow work it into the workflow that to be in one home and to be on the community queue, the clients do need an ROI. So it's best to just collect that ROI before even starting the one home, just to make sure that they can actually get access to some of those housing resources. Additionally, after the assessment is completed, the BI spit out is completed in one home, users do need to refer them to the community queue. So just completing the assessment doesn't put them on the community queue automatically. They do need to actually refer them to the community queue, which is outlined in training. If you have any questions about any of these things, please reach out at the HMIS help desk. And that is all of the updates that I have for today.
Hey everybody, I am Stacia. I'm the provider engagement lead here at MDHI. And just wanted to mention a couple things. So really the first part of this slide is kind of static. We have it on here every time just for new folks. So Bashira and I have split things like the counties we serve between us. So she covers Arapahoe, Adams, City of Aurora, Broomfield, and Boulder. And I cover Denver, Douglas, and Jefferson counties. And then, as always, there's a reminder for the DPAL zone. Excuse me. So just wanted to mention something that we're going to be starting. And we actually just found out that another COC does this already. So we thought we were being pioneers, but no, we're not. So there's two very important documents that all users of HMIS should have their eyes on. So the first one is the Data Privacy and Security Plan. And then the other one is the co-HMIS statewide policies and procedures. So, I mean, really, we just want people to have eyes on these documents because they contain a lot of useful information. They are very long documents, so we don't expect someone to, sit there and read, both of them in one sitting. But it is something that should be reviewed. So to kind of help ensure that, we are going to, Julisha and I are actually going to look at this tomorrow, I think. We're going to be putting these documents, or at least a link to them, linking them or providing the link to these documents in Zendesk in LMS. So for new users, you would have the link to the documents, but then you also have to sign or actually type your name right in the LMS saying that you have been given access to these documents. So it's really up to them to read them, but we just kind of want to have some kind of like accountability that people, know where the documents are. And also a lot of the questions that we get can be answered within the documents themselves. So, and then I think Laura's here from Family Tree. Just wanted to thank you again for this brilliant idea. So to capture the users that are already in HMIS, we'll also be implementing this into the refresher training. So like I said, so for the new users, they'll see this, and then for the people taking the refresher, they'll see the same thing, hoping to capture all end users in HMIS.
Hi, everybody. I know I don't have a slide in here, but I'm Bashira, the Provider Engagement Specialist, and I just wanted to add a quick note about monitoring. So HMIS monitoring will now be called HMIS agency check-ins. If you've received an email from me regarding the agency check-ins, please fill out the jot form and grab a date to meet with the monitoring team. We will be doing this as a phased approach. So if you have not heard from me yet, please be on the lookout for email from me or Stacia.
Great, thank you. So just a few points to wrap up, and then we will open it up for questions. So just a reminder to please submit all your questions and requests to the help desk. So hmishelp@mdhi.org. This helps us have eyes on the tickets and also track. It also will sending it individually may cause a delay of your response. So if somebody's out sick or if somebody's out on vacation or out for extended amount of time, if you email them individually, it's going to get lost in their inbox. And sending it to the help desk, our whole team has eyes on it, so we can respond and assign out appropriately. So just a reminder to have you and your staff, all correspondence go directly to the HMIS help desk. And sometimes it can be buggy. We are working through it, but just a good practice is if you when you submit a ticket to the HMIS help desk, you should get an auto response back saying that you had successfully submitted that ticket. If you happen to not get that auto response back, I would say wait a little bit and try to submit the ticket again. We have a way on our end we can merge tickets if we happen to get duplicates, but just kind of a rule of thumb, if you submit a ticket, you should get an auto response. If you didn't get an auto response, I would say, you know, either wait a couple hours or wait till the next day and submit another one just to make sure that it went through. You guys received it, I believe, in June. It may have been July, but we are going to get on a regular cadence. Right now it's quarterly to be sending out newsletters. So I think what we'll do is we will kind of do an off schedule of, you know, try to have virtual DPAL meetings, and then in between the virtual DPAL meetings, we will be sending out newsletters that would have any information, any kind of helpful hints, anything like that. So if you can think of anything that would be useful for us to include or helpful for us to include in the HMIS newsletters, please feel free to either put it in the chat now if you know if it's on top of your head, or you can send that to the HMIS help desk and we will incorporate that into our newsletters. And then just one last update, and this is from the One Home team on a coordinated entry update, is we are currently in the process of reviewing all of the coordinated entry documents to revise the forms and workflows to be more trauma informed. So part of these revisions does include changes to the coordinated entry assessment, also known as the VI-SPDAT. And so these changes will be pretty much retiring the use of the VI-SPDAT and replacing it with a more equitable assessment. And so there will no longer be a score attached to the new assessment. I believe the coordinated entry team has reached out to any agency that they know of that currently uses the VI-SPDAT score in, you know, part of their processes. But if not, if they haven't reached out to you, please reach out to them at the contact@OneHome email to let them know that you do currently use the VI-SPDAT score, and a member of the coordinated entry team will respond back to you to talk through alternatives, given that the VI-SPDAT is going to be going away and there will no longer be a score. And then the timeline for the release of when all the revisions is going to happen with coordinated entry will be communicated out soon. So just look for the MDHI communication, especially around the coordinated entry One Home contact. And to answer your question, Robin, this includes all VI-SPDATs. So it will include youth, families, and individuals. So that is all of the structured content we have. And, you know, I know that was a lot with the data standard changes. So we have about 8 minutes left. So just want to open it up. If anybody has any questions, you know, feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat. We will answer any questions that you all may have. And again, we will stick around until the end to answer any questions. But thank you guys for attending, and looking forward to working with you all.
I have a
Jody, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm sorry. for not raising my hand, but I tried and I couldn't find where to raise my hand.
You're
So I have a question and a request. The question is back towards the beginning when Matt was talking about referrals from one home to organizations. I was a little bit confused by that.
So yeah, Jody, if you are a current housing provider and you get referrals to match clients to your units through the one home team, that's
Right.
what it means by coordinated entry referrals.
Okay, so they wouldn't be sending referrals to us if we're just a shelter, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And the request is that when you do sunset VI SPDATs, could you launch a propaganda campaign to stop people from referring to coordinated entry enrollment as VI SPDATs?
Yeah, you have my support, Jody. It's
Yeah.
a tool that's being sunset in more and more places. It's also a huge undertaking. It's a multi-year undertaking for continuums that choose to do this. There's some documentation from our software vendor BitFocus about the communities in Nevada that did it. And it took them 3 years to fully get something moving in place.
It's just a matter of my concern is just communication. People say, how many VI SPDATs have you done when they really mean how many people have you enrolled in one home?
Yeah, there's a lot of conflated terminology, Jody. I don't disagree. I agree with you is how you say that.
And it drove me a little bit crazy up until now. And once they sunset the VI SPDATs, it'll really drive me crazy.
Yeah, and it's more,
But they
to be
still do.
clear, rephrasing of questions that are used from the VIs and then removing ones that are not. So it's more like creating a more targeted assessment
Yeah.
than like truly ripping it up the playbook and throwing it away. But this work will always be iterative and there will be additional changes that are needed over time.
Okay, thank you.
And Melody, I think your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks. I'm assuming that the one home training also has to be refreshed after we complete the HMIS training for the refresher course. All the staff then also has to complete an additional one home training, or is that also a refresher course? Does that make
Yeah,
sense what I'm asking? Okay.
Yeah, so the one home training will be revamped given the changes that they are making to these forms and processes. So the actual date of that training, when that training will be available, has not been set yet. So we will launch that or communicate that when the training is going to be done. So it will not be part of the refresher that's in September. It'll be coming after.
Okay.
But yes,
great.
everybody that currently does coordinated entry will have to redo that training just because of the stuff that has been changed and updated. So we will communicate that out as well. But it will be separate this year, but in subsequent years, it will be lumped into one.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, well, we will again, thank you guys for joining. We will hang out for another 3 minutes just in case any other questions come up. But also feel free if something comes up after the meeting, which I know happens frequently, you can reach out to hmishelp@mdhi.org to submit those questions that may have come up after the fact. And I did put it in the Slack or in the comments that we will release this recording and the slides. We will be posting those on the DPAL zone on Zendesk. So you can share with your staff, refer to them later for reference on anything that was talked through today.